Alrighty, greetings and salutations everyone. My name is Andrew Kirchhoff and welcome to our Friday night live stream for week 11 of the 2024 fantasy football season, where we'll be talking anything and everything related to fantasy football for the next hour plus. If you guys have a question, type it in the live chat, send it in via super chat, whichever way you prefer. Make sure you include your scoring format. The more context in regards to it being a standard, half PPR, full PPR, definitely helps me answer that question and get us rolling. Outside of that, I hope you guys are doing well on this wonderful Friday. You can be anywhere else in the world, but you decide to be here, and that is greatly appreciated. Again, for many of us, obviously we're still trying to set our lineups. Earlier today, we got more indications and more declarations as to whether or not players are going to be active going into this week. As you can see, earlier today, we dropped the video in regards to our week 11 hidden gems. That's a second week in a row in which you have a Buffalo Bill on the cover, and hopefully Dawson Knox doesn't disappear like Amari Cooper did last week. But going into this week with Dalton Kincaid out with his injury, with Sam Laporta out with his injury, we also have Trey McBride on bye with so many potential, impacting tight ends absent. Many of us are looking towards the waiver wire, so Dawson Knox could be an option. Will Dissly, Jonnu Smith, those are the available options that I'm sure many of you are potentially considering going into this week. We'll talk about that as we continue on, and of course help you potentially make trades, set lineups, and take care of everything. Alfredo in the chat says Lakers about to get the dub. I hope so. I mean, listen, I didn't make any underdog entries on it. I didn't even know there was a game today. I was so busy with hidden gems that I got sidetracked, but nonetheless, hope you guys are doing well. Let's get into it, shall we? Joey Boy sends in the first super chat of the day. Thank you, Joey. Joey says, would you rather Alexander Mattison or Benson as the bench stash for rest of season? Okay, so there are multiple qualifiers and or prerequisites that would answer this question, I think, by itself. If you have James Conner, okay, and you have healthy running back depth, as in there are 3 or 4 running backs on roster that are already established and are set, good to go. Additionally, you don't have any upcoming bye weeks in which you'll need a player like Madison to fill in for. If that is the situation, right, where you're clear, you got good depth, you don't need you don't have to worry about upcoming bye weeks, anything of that nature, you'd roster Benson. But in the event in which you don't have the healthy running back depth, let's say you only have 3 starters total, including Connor. Connor's going on bye this week. You might even need Madison to play this week, or you want to just potentially prepare for an upcoming bye. For example, again, there are 6 teams on bye next week, and then 6 teams also on bye in week 14. So you might need to prepare for those instances. So if that's the case, you would just hold on to Madison just to make sure that you can continue to rack together wins in the upcoming weeks. Thank you very much, Joey Boy. I appreciate it. All right, Fox sends in a question with a PH. Says, full PPR, Higgins, Reed, or Quentin Johnston? Thanks. Yeah, as of right now, I'm playing Reed. Quentin Johnston, I like him as an overall prospect. I don't think his target count is generous enough within that offense for me to feel confident starting him over Higgins or Reed. But between Higgins and Reed, of course, Higgins still coming off of the injury. As of this week, he fully practiced today, should be ready to go, but I'm still going to prefer Reed in this instance. So I will take Jaden Reed against the Chicago Bears, please and thank you. All right, moving on to a question that comes in from Bruce Cowdrey. Thank you, Bruce. Bruce says, in a full PPR, Andrew, please rank Knox, Andrews, and Hawkinson. Will do. In a full PPR scoring format, they would order in the following: Hawkinson 1, Andrews 2, Dawson Knox 3. Thank you. Alfredo says, estimate or Myers in a full PPR. Freddie, listen, brother, you're going to get the rankings on Patreon. Freddie, you know that. But Myers is so much significantly better in a full PPR because of the receiving aspect that Estimate does not have available to him. So yeah, Jacoby Myers would be the play there 10 times out of 10. Levon in the chat says, Mahomes or Wilson, and who do I flex? Myers, Chubb, or Pollard? I think it depends on scoring format regarding those other alternative players. But as of right now, I'm going to say Russell Wilson and Jacoby Myers are probably your 2 starts going into this week. Levon, thank you. All right, Dirk Doug sends in a question, says, my question's in the chat. Sounds good. Says, Knox or Muth? That's a really good question. Look, the issue with Freiermuth is his lack of target opportunity. In comparison to Knox going into this week, who will have the entire, I talked about it for like 10 minutes today on that Hidden Gems episode. He's going to have the entire workload that is typically, attributed to the tight ends of the Buffalo Bills, which again, there's a lot of potential there. On top of the fact that, of course, Keon Coleman's going to be out. There's a potential in which, of course, Amari Cooper may not play. I'm assuming he's going to, but even in his overall presence, Knox has a little bit more upside, in my opinion, based on the opportunity share. Even with the great matchup going against the Baltimore Ravens, I think the Chiefs present just as good of a matchup, if not better. So I will I will stick with what the fuck was that? I will stick with Dawson Knox in that scenario. To get to your follow-up on this overall question, Dirk, you said Laporta is out, so I'm assuming I should fire up JMO over Pearsall in the flex. I would do so, yeah. Thoughts on trading Pearsall for Cedric Tillman? I would immediately make that move. Give me Cedric Tillman rest of the season. Thank you. All right, we had a question that came in from Thomas Dabney in the chat. Thomas says, Josh Allen, I'm assuming that's what you mean when you say Josh. Achan, okay, that doesn't really work as Achan, but okay, I get it. You're really, you have a limited volume of characters you can use, Thomas, but you're using them all to a maximum effort, and I respect that. Even though you decided to type out Green Bay defense in a maximum sense, you could have just put GBDST, but anyway. Continuing on, Josh Allen, Devon Achan, okay. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's how it would have to be. Mixon, Kupp, Jamar, Hawkinson, Jacobs, and the flex. Okay, we have Garrett Wilson. We have Green Bay defense. Bench has Jordan Love, Tillman, Pitts, rest on the bye. Okay, Pacheco's on the IR. Is my lineup set for this week? Yeah, your lineup set, good to go. I wouldn't make any changes in regards to how it looks right now. It's in a perfect sense. Thank you. Appreciate it. All right, moving on. We had a question. Let's see here. And then Thomas had a follow-up. He said, put money on Bucks to make the playoffs, plus 250. Okay, just hear me out, okay, really quickly, before we get to Jennifer's question. In terms of the schedule for the Buccaneers, okay, after they come off of this bye, they take on the Giants, that's a victory. They take on the Carolina Panthers, that's a victory. They take on the Las Vegas Raiders, that's a victory, okay? Then they have the Week 15 matchup against the Los Angeles Chargers, which in my opinion should be a competitive one, but I still believe they're capable of winning that game. So let's say, for example, worst case scenario, they lose it. Okay, so then they're 3-1 after the bye. Dallas, you win. Carolina, you win. New Orleans, week 18, they win. So in the event in which they're going to win 6 of the next 7 games, with their current record of 4 wins, 10 wins would get them into the playoffs expectedly as a wild card option. So if it was me and if it was legal in my state, I would take it, Thomas. But that's obviously up to your prerogative and how confident you are on the matter. Even, again, that's with the assumption that they lose that Chargers game. If they lose one more of those games and they only end up with 9 victories, I think it's probably it's probably unlikely that they make the playoffs in comparison to the other teams that will probably be vying for a playoff positioning, like the Minnesota Vikings and the Green Bay Packers, who are still in the hunt there. The NFC West is very much so competitive as well, with Arizona playing incredibly well, the Rams on their kind of rise, and of course San Francisco. So there's just a lot of competitive teams. Washington, Philly. There's just not enough wildcard spots. So I like it, but they're going to have to win 6 of the next 7. All right, Jennifer Anderson sends in the question. Says in a PPR, Hollins or... Yeah, okay. So between those two... Okay, so Keyshawn Butte, the wide receiver of the New England Patriots, he's gotten himself, 6 targets each of the last 3 games, which is not bad at all. But as of right now, the whole question is Amari Cooper out? Because you're asking, does it change if Amari Cooper's out? So as of right now, I think regardless of whether or not Amari Cooper is in, I think I'm playing Hollins in both scenarios. Whether Amari Cooper's in the lineup or not, I'm playing Mac Hollins. I don't know if I can objectively trust a receiver from the New England Patriots at all, ever. In a full PPR, maybe DeMario Douglas because of the reception counts he gets. But in the case of what we get out of Butte, I think I'd rather just pivot off of it. All right, so let's see here. Thank you very much, Jennifer. Appreciate it. Moving on to the next question. We have LP2K who says, in a 12-team league, PPR, I currently have an 8-2 record. I have Jamar Chase, I have Wilson, I have Puka, I have Mooney, with Herbert, Richardson at quarterback, Kamara, Montgomery at running back. Trade Wilson for Allen. Might be able to without. So we'd basically... Okay, so here's my question, LP2K. Under the assumption that you're in a league in which you are starting 7, 1 quarterback, 1 tight end, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, and 1 flex, under the assumption that that's the kind of league you're playing in, you would foreseeably, for example, for the fantasy playoffs, be playing Jamar Chase and Puka Nacua as your starting wide receivers. Kamara and Montgomery would be your starting running backs. And then you'd basically, I don't know who your tight end is. It's regardless of that, that's their auto play. But you'd basically just be preparing for, okay, are we going to play Wilson or Mooney in the flex position? If you trade away Wilson in the event, and you get Josh Allen instead, in your position, I'd probably take the deal. I'd be comfortable with Mooney with the stability of what Josh Allen can present, especially with the upcoming matchups he has. It looks like they're going to be shootouts, especially with Detroit in week 15. It could be a tough matchup. I see it as a shootout from my perspective. If you think you can survive with Herbert, which I believe you can as well, we talked about it earlier this week in terms of rest of season strength of schedule. The Chargers have one of the best at the quarterback position. Let me go ahead and pull it up right now. So you can survive as is. You don't have to make this move. I would take it because I'm a little bit crazy in that circumstance. But looking at the upcoming schedule for the Chargers, let's see here. Chargers. Let's pull up the Excel sheet. So in terms of like the fantasy playoff schedule, Tampa Bay, Denver, New England. Like Tampa Bay is the auto. Denver hasn't played well as of late. They're giving up like 15, 16 points per game to opposing quarterbacks. Earlier this season, the Chargers already went ahead and put a pretty good number on them. And in New England, again, their defense hasn't played exceptionally well thus far this season. So I don't think you have to make this trade if you want to have the option of who you start in the flex. My only thing is, again, if you're already 8-2 and you're preparing for the fantasy playoffs, I instead of preparing to try to trade for a Josh Allen, I would be rather trading Garrett Wilson for someone like Mike Evans. That's what I actually would be doing. That's what I'm looking for. I would just get a better flex than what you currently have, if possible. If that's not possible, then we can explore that move and just go after the quarterback. Peyton Whitaker says, accepted trade Devontae Smith for Pickens. Wow, congratulations. I don't know how I don't know how that happened, but okay, congratulations. Well done. Especially after last night, that is very surprising in my mind. Andrew Gang says, BTJ or Quentin Johnston in a half PPR. I think I'm probably leaning towards playing Quentin Johnston there. I don't know if I can trust Mac Jones outright for the receivers. As for Evan Ingram, I can trust him. But everybody else, I think it's a little bit sketchier of a situation. Andres in the chat says, half PPR T. Higgins or Calvin Ridley in the flex. As of right now, I mean, if it's me, I'm playing T. Higgins. I don't know if I want to play Calvin Ridley as of yet. I know he's coming off of a great week. I just don't trust him, especially with the quarterback play there. I'm Gucci U. Polo sends in a question. Says PPR Waddle or Johnston? That's a good one. As of right now, do I trust Waddle wholeheartedly? No. I'd probably just stick away from him. I'll just play Johnston at the moment. Thank you. Marvin Lewis sends in a question. Thank you, Marvin. Marvin says, standard pick a starter, May, Caleb, or Richardson. All right, so of the available, we have, I guess, not very many great options. I'm not playing Caleb Williams. I'll tell you that objectively right now. I have no interest. I have to get it, you have to prove it to me for me to start you in that circumstance. I think I'm going to stay in the same vein with Anthony Richardson. I'd play Drake May out of the three. Thank you. Let's see here. We move on to Tommy Vu, who says, hey, Andrew, did you see my first super chat? Tommy? When did you send it? Yeah, now I see it. I guess I skipped it earlier. I don't know. When I was scrolling down, that was not there. I promise you that wasn't there. I didn't intentionally try to skip it, Tommy, but now I see it. Thank you. I don't know why. I scrolled down from Fox, went straight to Bruce, and that was okay. Anyway, continuing on. Tommy says, hey, Andrew, hope you're doing well. I am. Thank you. Full PPR. Who do I start, Juwan Jennings or Jaden Reed this week? I'd rather play Jaden Reed. Juwan Jennings is a great start, so don't even get it twisted. I think they're both solid plays this week, but between the two, I prefer to play Jaden Reed. Thank you. Moving on to a question that comes in from Peyton. Says, yeah, happy birthday. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thanks. All right, let's see here. Abito Despair says, pick 2, Bateman, Knox, Mac Hollins, Brian Thomas Jr., Elijah Moore, or MVS in a full PPR, 6 point per touchdown. Okay. So of those available options within the upcoming performance, let's see. The 2 highest ranked players that I have as it currently stands is probably Bateman and Brian Thomas Jr. Those would be the 2 that I'd roll with there, Despair. Thank you. Dirk Doug sends in a follow-up. Says, thoughts on Reed and London this week? Both have tough matchups that make me a little bit worried. Yeah, look, they're both going to play in the slot position. So depending on how these defenses want to approach it, if they're going to just sit in a nickel coverage where they're going to have an extra cornerback on the field the entire time, that'll be up to their prerogative, but you're not going to be able to stop the run consistently enough in doing so because of what Bijan and what Josh Jacobs consistently do. So it's going to force a lot of scenarios where mismatches will be created. Thus far this season, Drake London's playing like 40 to 50% of his snaps from the slot position. So he's not going to see Patrick Surtain for the entirety of the game. And considering Mooney's healthy, I'm assuming Mooney will probably pull majority of Patrick Surtain this week. I'm not worried about playing either of them. Again, Kyler Gordon is a solid nickel cornerback for the Chicago Bears. He's played relatively well this season, but again, I think both these guys, they're the number one receiving options of their offense. So I'm not really concerned about their overall upside. Can they pull a Terry McLaurin like last night and completely disappear? Absolutely. Any player can accomplish that. All it takes is a little bit of hard work and your quarterback being completely blind. But in this scenario, I'm not too worried about either of the two. I'd start them both very confidently. Again, you'd have to have a really strong alternative option to lean away from either of those guys in my mind. Corey Miller sends in a question. Thank you, Corey. Corey says 12 team full PPR. Goff, Connor, Jones, Amon-Ra, Debo, Olave, Kittle, Bateman, Rico Benson, Akers, was offered Stroud for Olave and Bateman. Take it. Yeah. I mean, again, if you want to have look, is Stroud a significantly better option than Goff? I wouldn't say he's significantly better, but I think the concern that revolves around the Detroit Lions offense just battering teams and just running the ball the entire time and avoiding having to, air it out. I mean, it's not even just a narrative, it's a reality. So in this scenario, yeah, I don't mind that move because, again, the reality is Olave, if he was to return, won't even return until week 15 or 16. And even then, he may not return right away because, again, he still may have a little bit of a complication with the concussions that he has sustained thus far this season. And they may want to take it safe with him. So as of right now, yeah, I don't mind that move. And then as for your next question, or target another quarterback. If I was going to target another quarterback in this circumstance or in this situation, I mean, again, when you look at that schedule for Stroud for the fantasy playoffs, weeks 15 through 17, Miami, Kansas City, Baltimore. Again, week 17, Baltimore, I know that the history of CJ Stroud against Baltimore last year was not great. He did not play well in either game, but this season it's completely different. That secondary for Baltimore is a liability. And then as for your last question, Houston or Green Bay, let me go pull up my Patreon rankings, and then I will tell you exactly which defense I have ranked higher as of right now. So going into this week, as it currently stands, between Houston and Green Bay, they're my number 2 and 3 defense. Houston's my number 2. Green Bay's my number 3. They're both tier 2 defenses behind Minnesota, who's my number 1 defense on the week. But I do prefer Houston against whatever quarterback alliance is going to be sent against them from the Dallas Cowboys. Thank you. Moving on to a question that came in from Isaacus, who says, trade for Baker for the playoffs. I'm 7-3. Yes, I would. Absolutely. Baker should be in a fantastic position. He's played incredibly well this season without wide receivers. Once he gets back Mike Evans, they will be that much more potent of an offense, and he will be that much more of a stable fantasy option. Meat Sweats sends in a question, says, full PPR, I need a tight end. I have Taysom Hill, but Knox, Jonnu Smith, and Hunter Henry are available on the wire. If you're playing in a full PPR, I would typically pivot away from playing Taysom Hill in all these scenarios because, again, in comparison to the alternative options, they just get more baseline of kind of stability because of the receptions total that they're going to be able to be exposed to, honestly. Like, in comparison to Taysom Hill, maybe Taysom Hill catches the ball 2-3 times this upcoming week in comparison to if Knox, Jonnu Smith, and Hunter Henry get to that position in which they're all very much so capable of having 5-6 receptions. That kind of stability of getting 4 extra points just off of receptions alone is very safe. I think in terms of the tight end position, obviously Taysom's a little bit different because he has the rushing upside for a touchdown in comparison to the alternatives that have to find themselves open rather than just have the ball snapped directly to you. But as of right now, of those options in a full PPR, I'd probably rank it as, I'll go back and forth on this probably a couple times before we get to Sunday, but I'll probably go Knox, Henry, Jonnu, Taysom in that order in a full PPR. Thank you. Moving on to a question that came in from FLWZ, or I don't even know how to pronounce it, so I'm just gonna read it out, just straight up. It says, trading away Jacoby Myers, Ricky Pearsall for Juwan Jennings and Mostert. Thoughts? I'm not really interested in making that move, mainly because I don't really find value in Mostert. I think he is cannon fodder. I think he's trade fodder in this scenario, mainly because if you just go back to his most recent performance on Monday night against the LA Rams, I mean, really, we just saw no utilization of Mostert. 0 rushing attempts, and they got a lot more potential usage out of Jalen Wright in that circumstance, mainly because Mostert's been fumbling as of late. So I'm going to probably lean towards rather keeping, Jacoby Myers and Ricky Pearsall in this scenario because I think they'll actually both be potentially startable for your team and could provide individual value, both of them, instead of like Mostert's just a handcuff. Like maybe if you have Achane, you can make that move, but I don't think it's necessary. All right, let's see here. We had a question from Adam Amar. Adam, hope you're doing well. Adam says, rank Marvin Harrison, Mooney, and Jacoby Myers half PPR. Okay, cool. So I'm assuming that's rest of season question, correct? because again, Marvin Harrison doesn't play this week. So yeah, it does say ROS. Okay, got it. So in terms of rest of season, considering I don't know who's playing quarterback for the Raiders every week henceforth, the way that I would order these three is Marvin number 1, Mooney number 2, and Jacoby number 3. That's the order in which I would progress it with. Thank you. Moving on to a question that comes in from Jen, who says, 10-team half PPR, tied for second. I'm going against the first place team. I need a big point potential. Okay. I have Laporta and Taysom Hill. Start Taysom, Knox, or Jonnu. Jonnu and Knox are available. If it was me, okay, in a half PPR, it's a little bit different because again, there's not as much of a value point, there's not as much of a value associated with receptions, which again, Jonnu and Knox would have an advantage in that category over Taysom Hill. But even in this instance, I'm still comfortable rolling with Knox, Jonnu over Taysom. So I'd still take Knox there this week. I have the utmost confidence in him in the absence of Kincaid. Thank you. All right, let me go ahead. My YouTube stream just lagged and crashed. So, you could probably still see me, but I can't see you guys. Okay, there you go. The chat's back. Okay. Continuing on, we had a question from Fox, who has a follow-up, says, love the content. Should I make any more moves on my roster? I have Lamar. Okay, so obviously you're not to move him, but obviously look to potentially pick up a backup quarterback for week 14. Obviously, he has a week 14 bye. Outside of that, you have Christian McCaffrey, who's past his bye week. You're good to go. Connor will be past his. Tracy will be past his. Kareem Hunt, which you don't need on roster, but maybe, again, you can use him this week in the absence of Connor and Tracy, so you're fine there. You have Keaton Mitchell, Amon-Ra, Pickens, Higgins, Reed, Quentin Johnston, Ottencraft. No, I don't think that you have any you don't have any necessities in terms of moves. You have a very strong roster, Fox, and I think you keep it as is and you let it ride. The only thing that I'm doing for the upcoming future is potentially dropping Keaton Mitchell in order to prepare for a week 14 Lamar bye. So if I look towards week 14's NFL schedule, specific quarterbacks that you might be able to pick up and play as a streaming option within the given week. Just going to throw out a couple names here. Let's say, for example, there's a reality in which Trevor Lawrence is active that week. That could be a play against Tennessee. I wouldn't mind playing Russell Wilson against the Cleveland Browns that week. If Daniel Jones is active, I don't mind playing him against the Saints, but he may not be the starting quarterback come next week. Aaron Rodgers versus the Dolphins, I don't mind either, but everything after that is just kind of subpar and or unrostered. So, because again, there's 6 teams on bye that week. So those are just a couple suggestions. Cool. Thank you guys. Appreciate it. All right. Getting back into the live chat. Let's see what you guys have to say here. CJ1629 says, are we nervous about Amon-Ra St. Brown this week? Lions going to smack the Jaguars and probably not going to pass much. You're not wrong. Again, Amon-Ra St. Brown, I talked about it on Wednesday. What has really kept his value afloat over the course of the season is the fact that he has scored a receiving touchdown in 7 consecutive games. And because of that, he has been a significantly more, palatable option in comparison to what we witnessed last year out of Amon-Ra. Again, the stats that I mentioned on Wednesday, I'll go ahead and reiterate them in regards to what we have seen from Amon-Ra this season in comparison to last year. As of the first 9 games of the season thus far, Amon-Ra, in comparison to last year, has 31 less targets, 19 less receptions, and 374 less receiving yards. He has 2 extra receiving touchdowns, which again helps in that kind of scenario. But in a full PPR sense, in comparison to last year, let me see here, 19 plus 37.4 minus 12. He has scored, divided by 9. He's averaging 5 points less per game in comparison to last year in a full PPR. Okay. It's pretty significant. But what are we to do? Are we going to bench him? No, absolutely not. He continues to still score points. It's not like he's not scoring. So again, if we're going to assume that the Detroit Lions are going to quote unquote smack the Jaguars, they're going to do so with the efforts of Amon-Ra St. Brown, especially with Laporta out. It just means more potential target opportunity in that direction. Brandon Simpson in the chat says, I traded Reed for Dowdle and Pearsall and Henry and James Cook for JSN and Dobbins. I don't like the Reed trade at all. I don't want to be trading for Pearsall at the moment. So don't really love that Reed trade. As for trading Hunter Henry and James Cook for JSN and Dobbins, I think it's very much so dependent on what you need at wide receiver. If you're desperate at wide receiver, then sure, JSN can provide that. But my only concern with the overall trade is that what kind of JSN are we getting henceforth? Are we going to get the same JSN that we saw most recently against the Rams or earlier in the season in which we saw against the New England Patriots, where he was a target fiend and an unstoppable force? If that's the guy we're getting, then that trade's a W. But again, only in time will we be able to kind of witness what the overall exposure to opportunity JSN is going to have going forward. Human Ziggy says Jacoby is the number one and Pearsall is getting more work every week. Yeah, listen, Pearsall is going to continue to get more work, but understand, I don't want to use it against him, but again, if he doesn't have that huge play for a touchdown, again, getting into the red zone and scoring touchdowns within this offense, there's a lot of competition, right? There's first and foremost George Kittle, who leads the National Football League in red zone targets. Okay, so that's first and foremost. You got to compete with that. Then you have Christian McCaffrey, who again, when he's in this offense in the red zone, not only is he a threat on the ground, but through the air. Then you have Deebo Samuel, who is similarly a threat on the ground and through the air within the red zone. Then you have Juwan Jennings, who objectively plays more snaps than Pearsall. And then you have Pearsall, right? So like he's number 4 in line. Without a huge play down the field to make a touchdown, scoring those touchdowns and getting the high upside performances are going to be rare in my opinion, especially when they take on tougher matchups. Let's see here. We had a question that came in from FLWZ who says, what about straight up Jacoby Myers for Juwan Jennings rest of season? Yeah, I don't mind that. Do I think they have similar value? I think Jacoby Myers is probably somebody that I think that's what the prior comment was referring to. So this is what I'm thinking, right? If I could get a guarantee that Gardner Minshew was going to be the starting quarterback rest of the season, I'd say that Jacoby Myers is the preferred option, right? Now, the Raiders have come out and specifically said that Gardner Minshew gives them the best chance to win. But at the same time, if Gardner Minshew comes out and throws 3 picks, I guarantee you at halftime, he's getting pulled for Desmond Ridder. I guarantee it. So because of the instability of quarterback, I am far less inclined to lean in that direction because there is it's just a ticking time bomb at this point. So I'd rather just have Juwan Jennings there. I Got Potential sends in a question. Says, trade DK Metcalf and Achane for JJ and Mike Evans. If you can survive without the running back depth, for example, I Got Potential, you've got ridiculous RB talent across the board, okay? Studs. Maybe you've got like Bijan, Kyron, and Jacobs, okay? In that instance, yes, I would take the deal. But in a situation in which you don't have enough running back depth to be able to make a trade like this, I don't know why you would. You know what I mean? Thank you. All right. Young OG sends in a question. Thank you, Young OG. I appreciate it. Says PPR. Running backs are Barkley, Kenneth Walker, Chuba, Najee, Braylon, and Mason. My wide receivers are Amon-Ra, Flowers, Myers, Dell. Trade Najee for Shakir or for Juwan Jennings. Okay. Considering the full PPR format, I'm not opposed to this potential move at all in any circumstance. Under the assumption that, again, you are playing in a league where you're most likely, I'm curious, Young OG, how many wide receivers can you start in your league? Because Barkley and Kenneth Walker, they're past their bye weeks. Chuba Hubbard will eventually come back and be past his. So Najee Harris really won't be a startable option in your team. If you can start 3 wide receivers or potentially 2 flex in a full PPR, I have no issue taking this trade. Specifically going after Shakir. Thank you. Peyton Whitaker sends in a question. Says, question of the night, Jake Paul or Mike the Iron Man Tyson? All right, great question, Peyton. Listen. Here's the thing. I'm going to be totally and 100% non-biased. This is the way that I see it. The boxing match that's going to happen, I don't even know when, later tonight, I see it's more of like a WWE event rather than an actual boxing match. That's what I think it is. I don't know if it's an actual boxing match. I don't know what kind of behind the door stipulations they have. I don't know what the deal is. Now, again, as of right now, because of my speculation regarding it, I don't know if I can, with a non-bias, objectively pick, because I would assume like if Jake Paul's putting the event on and he's the guy running the deal and he's the one filling Mike Tyson's pockets with 20 mil, who's to say that he doesn't have it in his contract that he wins? You know, like it's not even like an actual sanctioned match, right? It's like a, what's it called? It's a exhibition or something like that. I don't know what the actual terminology is. Maybe that's correct. Otherwise, if it was an actual match, I don't even care that Mike Tyson's 58 years old. I would assume that he's going to put it to him. That's what I'm going to assume. Time will tell. Let's see here. Nay Ray sends in a question. Says, is Michael Pittman droppable? Mac Hollins, MVS, or others? I wouldn't say that he's droppable for any of those. No, I'd keep Pittman as of this moment. Again, I want to see him come back from this week, see how he plays with Anthony Richardson, see if Richardson's learned anything in his time being benched. If Richardson comes out this week and throws the ball and at halftime he is 4 for 17 passing, you can drop him at halftime. But as of right now, no, I would not drop Michael Pittman as of yet. Thank you. Adam Amar says, Trey Benson or Brooks in a full PPR dynasty? Okay, that's a really good question. In terms of dynasty, didn't Chuba Hubbard just get re-signed for a massive deal? Chuba Hubbard, Let me check here. Am I mistaken in terms of him getting a new deal? No, he did get a new deal. So that's the thing. So he just got inked for a brand new deal, which won't make him a free agent until 2029. And Chuba Hubbard looks great. So with James Conner sitting at the current age that he's at, let me see here. James Conner, if I'm not mistaken, is 29. Let's see here. Yeah, he's 29 years old. In May of next year is going to be 30. I'd rather have Trey Benson, to be totally honest. Thank you. Let's see here. Now, if Jonathan Brooks had no competition and Chuba Hubbard had evaporated and didn't sign this contract, I'd feel more confident about it. But again, considering he's going to be there for the foreseeable future, I think it definitely jeopardizes the overall upside for Brooks in this upcoming, dynasty format. Let's see here. We had a question from Param. Thank you very much. Says Ramondre Stevenson or Darnell Mooney in a half PPR. Let me see where I have them ranked in my Patreon rankings, and I will refer back to it right now. Let's see here. I'm going to assume, Ramondre Stevenson. I have Mooney ahead of Ramondre as of right now. So Mooney would be the selection there. Thank you. Moving on to Nightwalker, who says, in a full PPR, running backs are Swift, Ramondre, Pollard. Wide receivers are Adams, Tillman, Jennings, Ridley. Pick one wide receiver and running back and flex from either. Much appreciated. No problem, Nightwalker. I appreciate you. All right, so of the available options that you have, at running back, I'm starting DeAndre Swift. No questions asked. That's where I'm going. I love the matchup, and I do think that the offense as a whole will be progressing rather than where they've been going which is the complete opposite direction as of the last 2 weeks. So I will play DeAndre Swift there, number 1, Pollard number 2, and Ramondre number 3 in that order. Now, as for the wide receivers, so if I'm starting Swift as your RB1, the wide receivers, I'm playing Adams as your wide receiver 1, and in your flex, I'm going to play Tillman. That's the way I go about it. Thank you. Adam A. Mars has questions below. All right, Adam, I see it. Says, I got Hurts, JJ, Pickens, Kyron, Brian Robinson, Mark Andrews, Mooney, Myers, Vikings defense, Eckler, Corum, Benson, Jordan Mason, Gainwell, Kendre Miller in the IR. Okay. Is this a championship team? Make any moves? I mean, as of right now, looking at it as a whole, I don't see having... Okay, so I get why you have all those running backs on roster. I hate that you have all those running backs on roster, to be totally honest. You don't need to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 handcuffs. It's irrelevant to have 5 handcuffs. But I get it. I understand it. In this circumstance, is this a championship team? Wide receivers... I mean, at this point, J.J. Pickens are solid going forward, especially with the upcoming schedule for the Steelers. So Pickens is top 12 rest of the way. J.J. is obviously in that top 3 as per usual. Your flex is either going to be Mooney or Myers, which I have no issue with. They both played incredibly well as late. Vikings is a great defense. Kyron's been solid. Just got to hope he finds the end zone. Brian Robinson looks great last night. Mark Andrews has been playing great. Yeah, I have no issue with this team. Perhaps I would like to have more depth rather than handcuffs on the bench, but I understand the strategy, Adam. I understand it. All right, let's see here. Billy sends in a question. Says, I'm wondering the same, Schnabel, leaning Knox. Okay, what does Schnabel say? He says full PPR, Will Dissly or Dawson Knox? I'm going to go with okay. Do I want to play Dawson Knox over Will Dissly? I like Will Dissly a lot this week. Damn, that's a really tough one. I think I'd probably lean towards Knox. But I don't think Will Dissly, in terms of ranking-wise, is going to be that much further behind him. Considering the absence of Laporta, if I'm going to re-rack these rankings, I probably have, so under the assumption it goes like Kelsey, Kittle, Bowers, Hawkinson. That's the top 4. Then it goes Andrews, Ingram, Kraft, and Njoku. That's top 8. Kyle Pitts would be 9. Then in my mind, I'm thinking it probably ends up being Dawson Knox 10, Will Dissly 11, Hunter Henry 12, Jonnu Smith 13, Taysom 14, something like that. Pat Freiermuth 15, Jake Ferguson 16, something like that. That would be the remaining top 16 going into Sunday morning's rankings. So I think I'd probably play Dawson there. All right, Human Ziggy says, Hunt, Achane, Derrick Henry, Chase Brown, full PPR pick 3. In a full PPR scoring format, I'm probably playing... No, not probably. If it's my team, I am playing Achane, I am playing Chase Brown, and I'm playing Derrick Henry. Thank you. Hunt would take the bench. Let's see here. Who is the man in Denver running back room? As of right now, it's Audric Estime. Again, based on what we saw on Sunday against the Kansas City Chiefs, the overall snap counts were in his favor, and the overall opportunity share of touches were in his favor. So I'd assume that he is the man of the backfield going forward. Now, again, he is still a rookie. He's on a short leash. As long as he continues to play well within his overall means, then of course he's going to maintain that starting RB role as the primary runner. But as for receiving utilization, don't expect him to get much workload in that overall correlation. Let's see here. Thomas Lewis in the chat says, full PPR trade Lamar, Bijan, Devontae Adams for Kamara, Chase, and Bo Nix / Wilson. I don't know why I would do that. I don't see. No, I don't. I get it. I just wouldn't do it. I don't think I'm trading Lamar. He's just been too good, too consistent as of late. G. Santos says, are we worried about Gonzalez shadowing Cup? Well, look, here's the thing. Gonzalez will shadow anybody, but is Gonzalez going to primarily play in the slot role? Is he going to cover him in the slot? I don't think so. Based on where he typically lines up, I can go and pull up the actual numbers thus far this season. So if I go to position and then I go to the slot cornerback coverage, and then I specifically talk about the New England Patriots. So as of thus far this season, the primary cover corner in the slot has been Marcus Jones. So that's who's going to be covering Cooper Kupp this week. It's not going to be Christian Gonzalez. Now, as of thus far this season, just to put it into perspective, Marcus Jones has played 147 snaps covering the slot position, in comparison to Christian Gonzalez, who's only done that 61 total times. So again, it's pretty heavily in the favor of Marcus Jones in this circumstance. They've also, really, they've even put safeties. Jonathan Jones, if he's healthy this week, can probably play in that slot role as well at times. But yeah, as of right now, it's going to be Marcus Jones that'll probably cover Kupp. So I'm not too worried about it. Even if Christian Gonzalez does cover him, again, Kupp is a talented enough receiver. I'm not, deathly afraid of that matchup. How about a Henry and Knox? Yeah, I'd have Knox ahead of Henry. Armin says, Disley rest of season is amazing too. Yeah, look, the Chargers rest of season passing attack has a very, very favorable schedule going forward. It's just a matter of, is Disley going to get the opportunity that we want? Like, he needs to get more like 6, 7, 8 targets per game rather than 5 or 3 to 5, right? So if the opportunity share kind of grows in the coming weeks because, Justin Herbert is going to have to air it out in upcoming kind of shootouts, then obviously it would it'd help us for fantasy for sure. Billy says, half PPR Higgins, Lamb, or Aaron Jones. I'd rather play Aaron Jones out of all three of those. The order at which I would actually approach it would be Aaron Jones 1, probably Lamb 2, Higgins 3 as of right now in a half PPR. Nick James sends in a question. Says, yo, Andrew, questions in the chat. Thank you, Nick. I see it right now. It says, full PPR. I have Barkley, Jacobs, Hunt, Debo, McLaurin, Nakua, T. Higgins, Shakir, Deontay Johnson. Should I trade Higgins for Dobbins or Swift? Or keep Higgins? I'm currently 6-4. Okay, so looking at your roster as a whole, obviously, getting another running back on roster would be helpful, but considering both Barkley and Jacobs are past their bye weeks, you're not going to need to replace either of the two. You would start them both rest of season blindly. As for your wide receivers, Debo, McLaurin, Nakua, Higgins, Shakir, Johnson. Okay, so basically you have 5 startable options at wide receiver. If you're playing in a league where... Okay, so this is what I'm thinking. If you're playing in a league where you're in a position to where you can technically start 3 wide receivers, 1 flex, or 2 wide receivers, 2 flex. In a full PPR, I'm keeping the roster as is. In the event in which you can only start 2 wide receivers and 1 flex every week, let me look. He's past their bye. Okay. I need to know when Shakir and Washington goes on bye. One moment, please. You know what it is? Yeah. Let me see this. And then, so NFL Week 12 buys, because I know Higgins also goes on bye. You're 6-4. You still need to win here and specifically win out in order to get into the playoffs, hopefully. So considering next week, the Bengals are on a bye along with the Bills. You would still be able to play McLaurin in the flex. And then after that, McLaurin would go on the, and then you'd have Shakir of it. I would make the trade. As of right now, well, okay, but look, who are we trading for is the question now. Dobbins or Swift? I wouldn't trade for Swift. I would trade for Dobbins. Do I love Dobbins rest of season? No. What I would actually suggest, Nick, is you take Higgins and you go knock on Bucky Irving, Tyrone Tracy, or James Conner door. And that's the way we go about it. Unless you can get one of those 3, I'm not in love with Swift or Dobbins rest of season enough to where I don't need to make this move. Thank you. G Santos sends in a question, says one wide receiver, running back, and flex between Jacobs, David Montgomery, Chase Brown, Mooney, and Tillman. Okay, G Santos, what is your scoring format? If you could do me a favor and type it in the live chat, that'd be greatly appreciated. Until then, we're going to answer more questions in the live chat. VMS says full PPR, Reed, Chubb, or estimate. Already starting Tillman. I would start Reed there as the other alternative option, VMS. Thank you. Barbara in the chat says start estimate or Spears. Who of the two should I drop? Okay, understood. And I need a running back because Rashad White is on a buy and a half PPR. In a half PPR scoring format, I would suggest playing Estime this week. If you were going to drop the alternative, it would be obviously dropping Spears there because, again, Spears still has to compete with Tony Pollard. Spears, again, in a full PPR, I think would be a more valuable option in comparison, but considering you play in a half, I would stick with Estime in this circumstance. Thank you. Sam in the chat says, hi, Andrew. How do you feel about Marvin Harris? Sorry, that's not Marvin Harrison. That's Marquez Valdez-Scantling and Taysom Hill this week. The Saints are so banged up, someone is going to have to get the ball. Yeah, look, that's the thing. We would have thought that the volume has to spread out, but the issue is even last week with quote-unquote volume, Taysom Hill, 2 targets. Marquez Valdez-Scantling, 3 targets. They don't even get the ball that often in their direction. How do I feel about them? I'm okay starting these players, but only in desperate situations. Like Marquez Valdez-Scantling is like in my 40s within my rankings at wide receiver. Like he's not going to even be close to the top 36 because he's so desperate for the deep receiving ball hitting for a touchdown for him to be relevant. So yeah, I'm a little bit less. Yeah, I'm a little bit less inclined to play both those options in comparison to the alternatives that are still out there as of right now. But again, if those are your best options, we ride with them, right? All right, let's see. Did G Santos end up saying PPR? Got it. Okay, so Santos, this is the way that I would go about it. Your starting running back is Chase Brown. The receiving workload that he gets is far too strong to pass up in any circumstance here. Then I would play Tillman at wide receiver, and then I would flex Josh Jacobs. I got to be slower. I think I talk too fast because I'm trying to get through as many questions as possible. And because of that, I am flubbing over every single syllable. Anyway, as of right now, to repeat, I'm playing Chase Brown as your starting RB, Cedric Tillman as your starting wide receiver, and then I will play Josh Jacobs within your flex. Thank you. Tony Lopez in the chat says, my starting wide receivers for rest of season are Adams and Higgins. Will they be solid or am I cooked? As of right now, considering Higgins goes on bye next week with Adams, who's going to be replacing them next week? Tony Lopez? Do you have any replacing options? If not, you're fine, assuming you don't need a win next week. I don't think you're cooked, though. I think they're pretty solid options. They're wide receiver 2s, right? So they're going to be ranked anywhere between like wide receiver 12 to 24 in the next coming weeks. But I mean, I think that's solid in my opinion, as long as the rest of your team is consistent enough. All right, Smell My Finger sends in a question. Says, PPR, is it crazy to go Hunt, Christian McCaffrey, Kamara over JT? Is it crazy? I wouldn't say it's crazy, mainly because of Anthony Richardson's presence. So no, I don't think it's crazy. I think you're perfectly in your right mind to do something of that nature. I have no issue with it. Rodney Bryce in the chat says, standard scoring. I need 2. Okay, I need 2 out of Tillman, Waddle, Higgins. Starting 2 at quarterback. I think I'm going to suggest playing Tillman and Higgins. I don't think I want to play Waddle in this circumstance. Thank you. Howard Jameson in the chat says, should I trade away Hunt for Brandon Aubrey and Brock Bowers? I don't want Aubrey. I would trade him straight up 1-for-1 for Brock Bowers, and I'd be happy. So that's what I would do if I was in your position. Yeah, cool. Sounds good. Thank you. Again, I don't want the kicker because, quite frankly, I want the open roster spot, to be totally honest. And I'd go pick up another kicker, John Parker Romo, the Minnesota kicker right now. Chase sends in a question. It says, McBride on bye. Got to drop 1. Amari, Downs, Mooney, Ridley, Olave, Chuba, Kyler. I have no IR spot. Starting Nix, Gibbs, Aaron Jones, Pickens, Myers, and Cook. Thanks. Okay, Chase. So of the available options, you got, again, a bunch of studs across the board here. You can go about it one of 2 ways. Because you are going to play Kyler rest of season, again, you have to keep him on roster, but the one of 2 ways is either you're dropping Downs or you're dropping Olave. So you're either dropping the healthy player in hopes that, again, not even hoping, you're dropping him because of the circumstance of Anthony Richardson starting. Or you are dropping Olave because of his injury history and the potential of him potentially not even playing once he's off of the IR. If I was in your position, considering the wide receiver depth you currently have, I'd be comfortable with no IR spot. Am I dropping? Yeah, I'd be comfortable dropping Olave, honestly. If you don't like the idea because you think, he's going to come back in week 15 and play well, I don't really love his matchups either from week 15 and beyond. But if you want to keep him, Downs would be the guy that gets the axe in this situation. Thank you, Chase. Jackie sends in a question. Says Pickens or Higgins at the flex. It's not even close. It is George Pickens by a metric fuck ton. It is the separation between the two will be significant. George Pickens is going to ball out this week against Baltimore. Mark my words. Ross Wong sends in a question. Says Love or Wilson this week? I'd rather play Russell Wilson. Again, that matchup should be very exciting. It is expected to be the highest scoring matchup of the week based on Vegas's overall totals. All right, let's see here. In a PPR, should I start Travis Etienne or Tony Pollard? That is a really good question. Let me see where I have them ranked right now, and then I can kind of structure. Let's see here. So as of right now in a full PPR, I have Travis Etienne as of yesterday's rankings ahead of Tony Pollard. And that was even before I got a full confirmation of Tank Bigsby being out. So yeah, I'm pretty comfortable with the idea of playing Etienne this week, personally. Thank you. Schnabel says full PPR. Who has a better long-term value, Ricky Pearsall or Quentin Johnston? I need to drop one. I would assume anybody associated with the 49ers passing offense has more upside going forward, I think, in the long term. But again, less competition in the form of Quentin Johnston. So I guess it's just a matter of like how you want to approach it. When I look at like the wide receiver strength of schedule going forward for quote unquote long term, from weeks 11 through 14, they take on Cincinnati, Baltimore, Atlanta, Kansas City. The next three matchups are cakewalks. Then they go into the fantasy playoffs and they get Tampa Bay, Denver, and New England, which again, Denver's a problem, but Tampa Bay, like really, you would only be keeping Quentin Johnston to try to play him between this week, week 11, to week 15. Weeks 16 and 17, I don't want to play him against Patrick Surtain, nor do I want to play him up against nor do I want to play him up against Christian Gonzalez. So for the next 5 weeks, if that's what we're talking about in terms of quote unquote long term, then yes, it'd be Quentin Johnston. But if we're talking beyond that, week 16, 17, it'd be Pearsall. All right, let's see here. Patrick in the chat says, in a full point PPR, trade Christian McCaffrey, Tracy, and Dowdle for Connor, Benson, and Gibbs. I'm 5-5. I'm hesitant because I feel like this week is a must win. Worried about Christian McCaffrey's injury going forward. If I was in your position, I would much rather have, if I was in your position, I'd much rather have the Christian McCaffrey side because of the full PPR format. I'd much rather have that side, especially with the confidence booster that I got earlier today with Mike McCarthy coming out and saying like, Dowdle's our number one. There's no longer a committee. It's all Dowdle all fucking day. Like that is all I wanted to hear. So I'm confident in keeping the Christian McCaffrey, Tracy side of that deal there, Patrick. Astro says, would you start Baker, Evans, Otton, and Bucky all at once? Yes, I would. I'm not even fucking joking. I would, Astro. Absolutely. Let's see here. Steve Posner says, Andrew, do you have any hidden gems you were thinking about in addition to the 6 in your video? Yeah. So the only other names that I had in mind of potentially mentioning, okay, let me go see if I have okay, so there's a couple, okay. Number one would have potentially been Rome Odunze, okay, and I was just going to throw it out there, but I was like, too sketchy. I think it's too early to hop onto a bandwagon of a player on the Bears as of yet. So I was going to throw out Rome Odunze there. I was also thinking about Cole Kmet, but I was like, maybe not. So I'm probably more highly of the Bears offense post offensive coordinator change than many people, most likely. But outside of those, if we want super deep sleeper options, Kayshon Boutte of the New England Patriots, again, was a guy that was in my radar. That's why I knew that the last 3 games he had 6+ targets. Another potential option, I mean, at running back, there's just no depth at all. So I'm not even like, there's nobody at running back that I'm interested in outside of the 2 that I mentioned. I could have thrown out like a guy like Nick Chubb, but you know to start him already because they play New Orleans. Outside of those options, anything else that I'm like super interested in? Looking across the board, no, that's it. Not too many great options considering all the teams on bye this week. All right, let's see here. Howard Jameson says, take Hunt for Bowers, trade, and do what with Andrews? Okay, so let me go back up to your team, Howard, just so I can see the full context of your roster, and then I'll get to that in a second. So you had said trade away Hunt for Brandon Aubrey and Bowers. Okay, so here's the thought process here, right? With Isaiah Pacheco practicing this week, right? That was his ramp up week. Just like in which we saw back in when Kareem Hunt was signed to the organization. I told you guys they're going to give him a full ramp up week. They're going to make him inactive, which they did. And then they eventually played him the next weeks after, 20 touches plus. So what I assume is that starting next week, Isaiah Pacheco will be the starting running back, and he's going to handle 80+% of the rushing attempts and probably 60+% of the receiving utilization henceforth. Pacheco will be back to being a top 15 running back henceforth rest of season. So trading away Hunt really does you the favor because you get out of him and you're getting back a top 3 tight end for fantasy. So you would theoretically start Bowers over Andrews henceforth every week. But what you would do with Andrews is potentially either start him in the flex or trade him for someone who needs a tight end. Maybe there's someone in your league that is in desperate need of a tight end, and Mark Andrews, who has scored 5 touchdowns in the last 5 weeks, could be an immediate kind of trade option in that circumstance. I'm taking him. I'm going knocking on Tyrone Tracy door, Bucky Irving door, James Conner door, anything like that. T. Higgins, Mike Evans, Jaden Reed, just throwing out names. If somebody in that situation wants a 2-for-1 or wants to take him 1-for-1, fantastic. We'll make a move like that. If you could take DeAndre Swift and Mark Andrews and trade it for like a Josh Jacobs off of your team, beautiful. Let's make something like that happen. But that would be it. He would be trade fodder, or he'd either be a flexible option in a specific matchup henceforth. Otherwise, again, Bowers is the massive upgrade that you're making there, and why we are prioritizing making the move, even though you have Mark Andrews. All right, scrolling down, Diego Garcia sends in a question. It says 3 to start: Adams, Higgins, Mooney, Shakir, and Jennings. Cool. Diego, what is your scoring format? If you can type it in the live chat, it'd be greatly appreciated. All right, let's see here. Speaking of a Diego, there's another Diego in the live chat. Says, this is Diego Gonzalez, who says, Burrow on bye week next week. Should I grab Russ or May? Russ plays Cleveland, May versus Miami. I'd rather play Russell Wilson going forward. Thank you. Grant in the chat says, in a full PPR, would you flex Pittman, Mike Williams, or Estime? In a full PPR, I'm going to start Pittman there. Number 1, yeah, I would start Pittman, actually. I'm not even joking. That's what I would do. And am I expecting any points? No, but quite frankly, in a full PPR format, you kind of have to. I don't want to play Estime in a full PPR. Not at all. Elseway sends in a question. It says, Otten on a bye and Laporta's out. I need to drop someone. Estimate or Seibert. My league is greedy. I won't get Seibert back. Ferguson, Smith, Knox are available. Who do I pick up? Okay, so here's my question, Elseway. If you drop Estimate, who are your running backs? Are you ever going to play Estimate rest of season? Is there any instance for the remainder of the year in which you're going to have a bipocalypse in which you'll need his services? If that is the case, then you have to drop Seibert and just go pick up another kicker. But if you're not going to need Estimate, dude, just drop him. No problem at all. And as to who you go pick up for this week, I'd like to pick up Knox and play him. All right. Diego says POR. Okay, I'm going to assume that means PPR, so like full PPR. All right, Diego. So in a full PPR format, the way that I would approach it would be playing Adams, number 1, Shakir, number 2. As for Mooney, Jennings, and Higgins, I feel relatively comfortable going Jennings, number 3 there. So I'd go Adams, Shakir, Jennings, 1, 2, 3. 4 would be Higgins, 5 would be Mooney. Thank you. Moving on, we had a question from the S-Box, who says, today Bigsby was dropped in my league. Add him. I don't know. I don't want him. If you want to pick him up, you absolutely can. So yeah, I'm not interested though. I'm not interested in that scenario. I don't feel like it is as, yeah. Here's the thing. When I look at the upcoming schedule, the Jacksonville Jaguars, nothing about it speaks to me saying like I have to have Tank Bigsby on roster. But in the event in which you need running back depth, you pick him up, right? Because he does have solid games in the fantasy playoffs. Like I'm not going to ignore that exists. But after, ETN gets the next couple weeks of momentum, it's going to be tough for them to split this backfield and for them to both individually have sustainable value. But it is objectively the truth that he has a very strong weeks 15 through 17 against the Jets, Vegas Raiders, and Tennessee Titans. So I don't mind picking him up if you need a running back. But if you don't, again, like if you're going to have to drop somebody else that you would start theoretically, not so interested in it. Because again, if you're not going to start him, what's the point of having him on roster? All right, let's see here. Andrew, which handcuff would you pick up for Christian McCaffrey? If it was me, I'd pick up Garendo. But that is, again, I've been on that Garendo train for a little while. Hopefully, we'll never need to have to handcuff Christian McCaffrey ever again. But that's the way that I go about it. Smell My Finger says, did I miss my second question? Did you miss my second question? I did. Apologies. You know what it was? I saw your first question, and then I saw your name again, and I thought, oh, that's the same question from before. It wasn't. Okay. So your second question, Smell My Fingers, my apologies, says you need 2 out of Higgins, DK, Tillman, and Tank. Out of those available options, Tillman and DK Metcalf are my 2 suggestions for this week in a full PPR. Thank you. All right, let's see here. Waleed in the chat says, my running backs are Bijan, Kyron, Bucky, Montgomery, Rico. Great running backs. Going forward, do I automatically start Bijan and Kyron and flex Bucky? Yes, I would. My wide receivers are London, Hill, Reed, Garrett. Only one was flex. How do I go about this? I mean, yes, you have a lot of stud talent across the board. Like, significant talent. But at wide receiver, you have to understand that London and Garrett Wilson both have upcoming bye weeks, so you want to keep the wide receiver depth. As for running back, I mean, again, you could theoretically, if your trade deadline isn't until a couple weeks from now, you could theoretically take, after Bucky returns, you could take Montgomery here and ship him off with a wide receiver and try to get a massive upgrade there for someone who wants 2 players rather than 1. Schnabel says, top 10 kickers of the week, 11. You'll see it on Sunday morning. I'll see you at 7 a.m. Gabe says, should I start Downs, Moore, or Waddle in a full PPR? I mean, flip a coin. If you have a 3-sided coin, this is the time to use it. I don't know how. I mean, really, it is so difficult to predict their output of production based on what we have seen as of late. Their matchups aren't great either. Like, I don't love any of these 3 options. If I was going to start one, I'm starting Downs because I'm scared shitless out of the other 2. But that's where we're at right now, which does not make me feel great. Sam says, which tight end do you think have the best floor outside of Kelsey, Bowers, Kittle? As of this week, who has the highest floor of production at tight end? It's Mark Andrews. That's what I would assume. Because again, like I mentioned on yesterday's video, the quarterback and tight end rankings, in order for the Baltimore Ravens to have won the last, 6 games here, they're having to score 4 to 6 touchdowns per game as an offense because their defense is so terrible. Their secondary cannot stop a soul. So again, if we're going to be in a situation in which Mark Andrews is going to continue to get his workload of opportunity, still going to be highly relevant there, but also have the highest potential upside of that touchdown in comparison to the rest, theoretically, he has the safest floor. Now, if we're talking about a full PPR format, the highest floor outside of Kelsey, Bowers, and Kittle is Hawkinson and or Evan Ingram, because in a full PPR, the reception counts that they're going to be exposed to is significantly higher than the rest of the overall tight end group as a whole. All right, Joseph Weintraub sends in a very generous super chat. Thank you, Joseph. I appreciate it. Joseph, Andrew, thank you as always. I appreciate it. I'm 8-2, already locked in for the playoffs. Only care about week 15 and on. Purdy, Gibbs, Gus, Neighbors, CD, Pickens, Garrett Wilson, McBride. Trade deadline is tonight. Is it crazy to leave Gus and eat the 5 points? Is it crazy to leave Gus? Listen, you're 8-2. Why do you, leave him. What's the point? Like, here's the thing, right? Okay. We're talking about for the future of the season, right? Is Gus Edwards your second best running back on roster? If that's the case, no, we have to make a trade. We have to. There's no reason. Okay, so here's the first and foremost question, Joseph. How many wide receivers can you start in this league? As in, what does it say? Not make a move? I'm confused. Are we talking about this week or rest of season? Because you're saying I only care about week 15 and on. So I don't want to start Gus Edwards week 15 and beyond. So I'm trading for a running back if you can do so. Now, as for this week, am I just leaving Gus Edwards in the lineup and just taking, the 5 points? Yeah, we'll take the 5 points. Did that answer the question, Joseph? I think I fucked it up. Let me know just directly, just type it in the chat what your question is. Is this a rest of season, weeks 15 and on question, or are we specifically asking for Gus Edwards this week? Thank you. B Normie says full PPR, Knox or Ferguson. Knox is on the waivers. I pick up Knox and play him. JVFN says in a full PPR, I got Gus, Kamara, Hubbard, Tracy. Do I trade Hubbard for Pickens or Collins? Yes, immediately. If you can get Pickens or Collins for Hubbard, I would do it. I mean, I'm not even joking. In less than a heartbeat of a second, it would be done. They'd be on my roster. Thank you. PC sends in a question. PC. Okay, so really quickly, before I get to PC's question, thank you. Joseph says rest of season. So yeah, rest of season, Joseph, we are trading for a running back. So the question is, Joseph, how many wide receivers can we start in this league? Is it a 3 starting wide receiver league with 1 flex? Is it a 2 wide receiver, 2 flex? Is it a 2 wide receiver, 1 flex? Or depending on the answer to that question, it will imply what you are doing in the upcoming future. Because again, as of right now, considering, let me see here. Just want to pull this up so I have the reference point. Okay. So as of right now, considering Lamb and Pickens are both past their bye weeks, Neighbors will be having his upcoming bye week. You can either move Neighbors now in order to address a running back position. Again, the names that I continue to harp on, Bucky Irving, Tyrone Tracy, along with James Conner, Josh Jacobs, Aaron Jones. A little bit more valuable options, but those are the names I want at running back for the fantasy playoffs. So you can get them. Let's go for them. Who are we going to utilize? Well, I will trade away CD for him. I'll trade away Neighbors for him. I'll trade away Garrett Wilson for him. Whatever one of them, but Pickens has to stay. Thank you. All right. PC sends in a question. Says PPR. Josh Allen. My running backs are Pacheco, Chase Brown, Tracy, Bucky. You put Chad. I don't know if you mean Chad. Who's Chad? Do you mean... I don't know who that is. Anyway, you have Dowdle as well. Okay. Kittle and Tillman. Okay. So, lost Rice and Ayuk. Just sent Justin Jefferson and Reed for AJ Brown, DK, and Sutton. Opinions. In terms of recouping depth, I'm perfectly fine with the trade. I don't have an issue with it at all. You're good to go there. Thank you, PC. Ira sends in a question. Says it's in the chat. Ira says Cardinals defense rest of the year. Yes. I have Pittsburgh's defense, but schedule is a bit rough. Grab Cards as a rotation when Pitts. Yeah, sounds good. I would pick up the Cardinals. I really like their fantasy playoff schedule, especially when they play against New England, Carolina, and then the Rams. I think the Rams game could be difficult, but if you get to championship week 17, at that point you can pivot off if you need to. But until then, the Cardinals have a really strong schedule. Henceforth. Thank you, Ira. Western Good says, need 2 running backs in 1 flex in a full PPR. We have Jones, Jacobs, Montgomery, and Lamb. Of those available options for this week, I am playing Jones, Jacobs, and Montgomery. I don't know if I feel objectively comfortable about rolling Lamb out there in this circumstance. Let me see. Where do I have Lamb in a full PPR in comparison to Montgomery? Because that's really the only competitive whereabout that we have to kind of consider. So as of right now, where's Montgomery? Okay, as of right now, I have CD Lamb quite literally 2 spots ahead of Montgomery in a full PPR. So based on my full PPR rankings from yesterday, I'd play Jones, Jacobs, and Lamb. Off the top of my head, I don't know if I can trust Lamb, and that's why I'm kind of leaning towards Montgomery because I know I can get an easy 13 points. But if you want the upside of it, you would go with Lamb in that point and just hope for the best against that Houston secondary that has played horrible this season. All right, Elseway sends in a question, says running backs are Montgomery, Connor, Hunt, Pacheco, drop estimate. Yeah, in that scenario, okay, so here's the issue. Connor's on a current bye week, Pacheco has already passed. Yeah, in that scenario, you can. That's fine. Joseph says, I can play 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, 1 tight end, 1 flex. Who am I packaging for an RB? I mean, of the available options that you have, the way that I'd go about it is I would take, again, I'm not packaging. There's no package deals here. If somebody wants to take Neighbors, CeeDee Lamb, or Garrett Wilson 1-for-1 off of your hands, you're going after a Josh Jacobs. You're going after a James Conner, a Bucky Irving. That's what we want in exchange. Straight up, 1-for-1s. If they want Gus Edwards too, they can have them. But honestly, you probably need Gus this week for just to fill in. Thank you. All right. We got that. We took care of that. Perfect. Western Goods that's into a follow-up. Says, my other wide receivers are Kupp and Nico Collins. My quarterback is Lamar. My tight end is Njoku. Got it. So, yeah, I mean, you're comfortable there. Very comfortable. So, conventional wisdom, going with Andrew's rankings from yesterday. Lamb, Jones, Jacobs. Thank you. Enzyme says, Andrew, Who are we starting in a full PPR, Mooney or Hopkins? I'm beginning to slowly but surely progress towards Hopkins in that scenario. As the week has gone on, I'm opening up more and more to the idea of playing Hopkins there. Let's see here. Brandon Simpson sends in a question. Says, I traded Reed for Dowdle and Pearsall and James Cook. Yeah, I read this earlier, Brandon. And Henry for JSN and Dobbins. Starters are Hurts, Derrick Henry, Lamb, Higgins, Njoku. Who do I flex? Okay, so if those are your starters, theoretically, Hurts, Henry, Lamb, Higgins, Njoku. So you need one more running back to start and one more flex to start, right? So under the assumption you can start 2 running backs and 1 flex, the second running back play, obviously, because of how you made these trades occur, would be Dobbins. And then you're flexing JSN. That's the way you go about it. Thank you. And a full PPR. Let's see here. Constantino says, rest of season PPR Downs or Waddle? I mean, I'd like to hope that Waddle is going to wake up anytime soon. So yes, I prefer to have Waddle rest season. Eric says, Jameis or Drake May this week? I'd rather have Jameis, honestly. Khalil Herbert or for Benson? Yeah, I would drop Khalil Herbert for Benson. I would. Also drop Kraft or Jonnu for Coker? No, I wouldn't drop. Well, I would drop Jonnu for Coker under the assumption that you're not going to utilize him. Yeah, that's fine. But again, you're never going to start Coker. That's just the reality of the situation. You're just picking him up because you want to. Diego says, trade JSN and BTJ for Marvin Harrison, both on my bench. Yeah, I don't mind that. That's fine. In terms of long-term, like upcoming schedule value, I'd rather have Marvin Harrison going forward. Hopkins or Tillman in a half PPR, I prefer Tillman there. Start 1 quarterback. Jordan Love, Jameson, was that? No, it says Jameis Winston and Sam Darnold. Jordan Love, number 1, Jameis Winston, 2, Sam Darnold, 3. That's the order in which I go about it. Eric says, we already took care of that one. We're good to go. Reese says, need a running back. I have trades of J.K. Dobbins for Pickens and Chase Brown for Debo. Okay, interesting. Full PPR. I have J-Jet. I have Amon-Ra, David Montgomery, Jalen Warren, Pacheco on the bench. What do I do? 55% chance to win this week. If you have to win this week, okay, and you're trading for a running back, okay, I'd rather have Chase Brown rest of the season. So I'm giving away Deebo Samuel in order to get Chase Brown in this scenario. So yeah, if that's how you make the trade, yeah, let's make that move. Let's trade Deebo. Let's get Chase Brown on roster and let's keep it moving. Now, in the event in which you're like, okay, well, Andrew, then Chase Brown has a bye week next week. Well, Pacheco would theoretically fill in that scenario. But if you're like, well, I want to have somebody that is going to avoid bye week in the future, then you would do the J.K. Dobbins trade. But again, I don't like the idea of trading away Pickens for him because of how much upside Pickens presents on a weekly basis going forward here. Najee Harrison or Madison if Warren misses this week? If Warren misses this week, it's Najee Harris. Even if Warren doesn't miss this week, it's Najee Harris. Tony Lopez says, I'll probably have to start 2 out of JSN, Pearsall, Quentin Johnston next week for Adams and Higgins. Okay. That'll still be fine. You can still trust both those options. I think they're like JSN and Quentin Johnston will be solid next week, I think. Humanity says, start 2 in a full PPR, Myers, Jennings, Tillman. Yeah, I'll take Myers and I will take Tillman there as the 2 highest ranked. Very closely behind is Jennings, though, I will say. Let's see here. We took care of that. Get Some says start 1 quarterback. Okay, we already took care of that as well. We move on to Patrick 510 who says full PPR. I have Kupp as my wide receiver 1. Who do I start as my wide receiver 2 and flex out of Tillman, Sutton, Shakir, and Mooney? In a full PPR, the way that I would go about it, we'd be playing Sutton as your wide receiver 2, followed by Tillman as your flex. Shakir would be the potential flex option, but considering again what Tillman's done as of late, Tillman and Sutton will be the starts. Thank you. Next question you'd also put, would you trade Mooney for Ladd? I wouldn't, no. I'd like to keep Ladd. I'd like to keep Mooney for right now. Nick says Mooney or Jennings. I have London full PPR. I'd rather play Juwan Jennings this week. Thank you. Barbara says start 1 in the flex spot. Shakir, BTJ, Jaden Reed, or Amari Cooper. I have Chase. Okay, yeah, out of those available options, I'm playing Jaden Reed. Thank you. Primetime Dime 8181 says pick 2. Higgins, Nico, Jennings. I would play Jennings and I would play Nico. Thank you. Hyper says start Adams, Reed, or Shakir. As of right now, it's probably that exact order. Adams, Reed, Shakir. Thank you. All right, guys. I think that's what we're going to call it here. Typically like to have these live streams hour and a half, but I think that's a pretty good solid point. I appreciate y'all coming through. I'll be back tomorrow afternoon starting at 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time answering questions. Outside of that, again, I did post the hidden gems video in regards to potential players that may be quote unquote hidden in your league. Probably already rostered, but again, if you want to check it out, go for it. At the end of the episode, we went over a couple potential underdog entries that I made for this week. Again, those I'm pretty confident in. I didn't chase any touchdowns, none of that BS to where we're going to get clipped, even though, again, it's probably smart to potentially put an anytime touchdown for Derrick Henry, which I probably will do tomorrow, throughout tomorrow's live stream. But as of right now, that's what we're going to call it. I appreciate y'all, joining us this afternoon. Thank you of course, for those of you who click the like button, for those of you who sent in super chats, for those of you who are just here, potentially not even typing. You were just lingering, hanging out. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cue the music. Have a great rest of your Friday night. And until next time, guys, which will be tomorrow, I'll see you guys. Peace.